Welcome back to In Session, deep dive into healthcare policy we're bringing to you every week. I'm Ryan Bernal with the South Carolina Hospital Association. Here's the rundown from week 16. We only have 2 weeks of session left. That means the General Assembly has 6 full legislative working days remaining to get their priorities across the governor's desk, or at least to the governor's desk. Come Thursday, May 14th, they will adjourn and they will go home at 5 o'clock. The reality is we will see more activity over those remaining 6 legislative days than we have maybe all year. Many of our priorities are right near the finish line. We saw some activity on those this week. As it relates to that May 14th deadline, the House Ways and Means Committee met this week to move forward a sine die statute change that will allow the Budget Conference Committee and the Budget Conference report to be debated by the House and Senate after that May 14th deadline, after the sine die deadline and statute, with the Senate President and the House Speaker calling them back at any point before the end of June, before the end of the state fiscal year. What we have not seen pass in advance yet out of the House is the sine die resolution, which typically governs what they can take up in that interim period after they adjourn and go home with the last day of session. We're hopeful to see that amended to accommodate some conference reports for any outstanding compromises the legislature needs to make between competing Senate and House versions. And we'll bring an update on that if it does. If it doesn't, this will allow them to take up the budget, and they certainly have all the time in the world with 6 days left to pass all the various pieces of legislation they deem priorities. Regarding our priorities, we had some conversations this week on HALO and concerns around parental rights. We've offered several different versions of parental rights language to accommodate that concern, and hopefully we'll see that taken up on the Senate floor in the last 2 weeks. The Senate got to medical malpractice kind of surprisingly late Wednesday night. As they work through the calendars, the Senate starts addressing some of the House bills that are on their calendar. They brought up medical malpractice, and Senator Massey, the leader of the Senate Republican caucus, put up an amendment to delete the increases to the non-economic damages that we've been discussing all year long. That would essentially make it close to a perfect bill for hospitals. So we're very grateful for his support, his leadership. What really that means is the Senate has started the conversation. They take a lot longer to debate these issues. There are a lot of competing interests. There are a lot of other factors to the tort claims law and to those non-economic damage caps, what it means to governmental entities, schools, et cetera. So we expect them to be working within the chambers and with one another on what a compromise looks like that's suitable for the Senate. In the meantime, if you have interest in this issue, I encourage you to reach out to your senator directly. We'll be sending a call to action next week on our remaining priorities, primarily HALO, medical malpractice, and budget. But this is a really important one, and they need to hear from you. As it relates to the budget, it's now in the House's hands. They expect to take that up at some point next week on the House floor. They'll be working on an amendment. That may take them 2 weeks, but the Senate has passed that. And so, as I mentioned, we'll be sending out a call to action and asking you all to engage with the House members and their budget conferees to adopt the higher level of the Medicaid budget funding. Just a reminder, the Senate did a little bit less than we need, and we really need the House to deliver. In addition, the Senate Medical Affairs Committee took up an itemized billing bill. We haven't talked too much about that this year. Heard a lot about it last year as it advanced through the House. This is a bill Representative Heath Sessions has been promoting and trying to get across the finish line, all aimed at price transparency, right? We want the consumer to know what they're receiving. The reality is funding for healthcare is complex, and until Congress decides to take proactive action to make it less complex, it's difficult to understand a patient bill. That's just the way it is. But we have been working with him and with the senators to pass legislation that summarizes what all is entailed in a patient bill. That advanced out of committee this week. There were some concerns about debt collections and other questions for other involved parties and stakeholders. We'll be watching to see how those concerns are addressed in the coming weeks. At this point, We're waiting on the House to take up the Senate version of the budget. It's a House bill, so it's gone back to the House, primarily focused on the Medicaid budget. And we really want to see not just the House passed version originally be adopted, but the House go a step further and increase the Medicaid funding to fully fund the state agency's budget. If they're able to do that, then we will be calling on you to advocate to the budget conferees, the conference committee made up of 3 senators and 3 House members charged with landing on a compromise for the state budget, which will ultimately be presented to all the legislators and then sent to the governor. We want to make sure that Medicaid budget number is as high as possible. Next week, we'll have Rebound Behavioral Health as our hospital of the week. Really excited to seeing some of our behavioral health folks there at the State House. Just tremendous words of support and encouragement from the legislature, having our hospitals present. Grateful for everybody being involved. And then in 2 weeks, the last week of the legislative session coincides with National Hospital Week. And the governor is prepared to sign a proclamation. We've got House and Senate resolutions moving. So it'll be a great way to end this legislative year on a high note, acknowledging all the good work that hospitals are doing. That's all for this week. We'll catch you next week on In Session.